What does a Catholic retirement look like? We'll find out in this episode of the Catholic Money Show. Thank you for joining me today on the Catholic Money Show. I'm Jonathan Teixeira, your host, one of the co-founders of Wallet. On this show, the Catholic Money Show, we talk about that intersection of faith and finance, how they work together, how our faith can inform and shape the way we look at our money. And today is a doozy. I know, maybe we're either always thinking about it and worrying about it, or maybe we're never thinking about it at all. And either of those two are not very good. So today we are going to think about retirement in maybe a new way. Beyond just the numbers, beyond just setting aside for the future, how should a Catholic approach retirement, think about retirement? What should those words even mean for us? I believe it should be different than the rest of the world. And I want to dive into that today. And to do that, we are going to welcome one of our special guests. This is KJ Smith, founder of Ethos Logos Investments. He's a financial member of the Catholic Financial Planners Network. He's got a degree in finance and a degree in theology. So right up our alley here, right? He's walked the Camino, that's Amanda's favorites. He's a certified financial planner, fiduciary, and coming to us from Chattanooga, Tennessee, a couple of days before his 17th wedding anniversary with his wonderful wife. He's got 5 kids, 14 to 5. Please welcome to the show, KJ Smith. Thank you for joining us on the Catholic Money Show.
Thank you so much for having me, Jonathan. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, this topic came up as we were, just kind of discussing things, and I thought, this is something that I think once we're talking about it and people are hearing it, they'll think, oh yeah, like it's going to make sense. It's going to fall into place. But I don't know if too many of us have given retirement much of a thought, especially kind of whether it's higher level or deeper level, one of the two, one of those levels of what is it? What should it be? How do we approach it through our faith and all that? So I think you are in a great spot. We're not old. I don't want to say we're spring chickens either, but certainly not the typical retirement age. But you've got a bit of a unique perspective that has allowed you to see this play out many, many times.
Yeah, you might look at me and say, why am I listening to this guy about retirement? Doesn't have enough gray hair yet. But I actually have really unique experience. One of the things I didn't really see coming when I started down the path of being a financial advisor and a financial planner was kind of the experience I've gotten to retire dozens of times. I've walked through that transition with folks, and it's not an event, right? It's a period of life. So it's not like some people think I retire on May 31st, but that's just the day that you maybe would stop working if that's what you're doing. But to be able to walk clients through this, prepare for it, see them transition from working to not working or doing something else, and what is that they're transitioning to? How do you plan for it? And then, with the faith and finance, it's really interesting too to see where the rubber meets the road. You can know the theology, you can read the church teachings and precepts and things, but then to actually see how that plays out in real life and get the phone calls from people that are doing it one way versus the other, and hearing their voice on the phone. How are they doing? What are they spending their time on? Who's enjoying retirement? Who's not? What works? What doesn't? It's been a really unique set of experiences because not many people get to retire dozens and dozens and dozens of times and try it all sorts of ways. But I've kind of been able to do that by walking the path with my clients.
Yeah. First, so I want to hear a bit about how some of your clients have done this, what you've seen work, what you've seen be really rewarding, all of that. But before we get into that, maybe we'll establish the baseline. What does our society, right? What are those standard American ideas of what our life should look like? I don't know, 65 and older or something like that. Especially in your role, in your position, what's your perspective on kind of just that standard American retirement?
Yeah, it's interesting because the world it's very much like the television commercials you watch, right? Where like this shampoo will make you happy. It's like they're motivating you with this sense of like euphoria if you use this product. And it's kind of the same thing. It's like the motivation to buy this financial services product or to get to retirement. It's always folks on the beach sipping mai tais or playing golf every day. And it's like just wait until you get to where you want to be, like and you don't have to work anymore. And it's the second adolescence. And it's kind of that I mean, that's what you see, right? Every time you see retirement, people on the beach, people on a sailboat, it's doing all of these things that are maybe not the most purposeful. It's more like go on vacation, which is great. I mean, it's wonderful to go on vacation, but for anybody that's actually, again, if you were working and you take a week long vacation, that week long vacation is very healing to you. You need that rest. But when that week long vacation turns into a month long, 2 month long, 3 month long vacation, you start to realize this is not the fulfilling life that I was thinking it was going to be. But yeah, I would say it's just like everything else you see. It's buy this thing, um, relieve your responsibilities, go do what you want to do. This is your time to pursue your own pleasure, right? It's more of a pleasure seeking period of time, I would say, than something that's like a purpose driven, mission oriented life.
Yeah, yeah. You said a second adolescence. I think that's a good way to think about it. It's a time where it would seem, I guess certainly if things kind of go according to plan and all that, you're going to have more time available, right? So that's kind of the same, right? At least when I was younger, right? I went to school. Maybe I had a little bit of a part-time job or something. Most of the time I was just going to school and then hanging out with friends, doing what I wanted, getting into stuff, doing hobbies, doing activities, all this stuff, right? And when you look at the commercials or you see, yeah, they're on the beach, they're just hanging out, they're having the time of their lives.
Mhm.
And so there's a few things there. I mean, I guess there's certainly the what's going on with that time period of life and if that should be our focus or not. But I think it also sets up this totally unnecessary division of life or like an antagonism between working and your life now versus future, where it's like, well, you won't have fun, or like, that's when all the fun's going to be. That's when the freedom's going to be. That's when you'll get to do what you want, which is to say, you can't do any of that right now. You have to just toil and work and wait and be miserable and don't get to do things and see the family or whatever it is. And that it will all be worth it. It will all be good, right? We are working so we can retire. Um, and that's not what we should be doing at all. We should be enjoying our life now, certainly, and living it to the full. None of us are certainly guaranteed tomorrow, let alone, long retirement.
I would say it is that difference of pleasure and enjoyment where like enjoyment is something that really feeds your soul that can be appreciated for a long time versus pleasure is like here and then gone like a piece of chocolate. I think what you're kind of hitting on there too are the folks that don't have that mission oriented, purpose driven life before retirement, because that's when they're going, well, I'm so miserable right now, but being on the beach is going to be what makes me happy. And they're not actually taking care of the root cause of their unhappiness, even in the moment when they're maybe a 35 or a 55-year-old not ready to retire. And to your point, you'll have more time, less responsibility. So there is some of that because, I mean, I have 5 kids, I have a wife. If I don't want to go to work, it's too bad. I have to go to work. Now, there is that toss up of like, if my job is really awful and I get no sense of purpose from it and no fulfillment, I'm going to be miserable. And maybe the only thing I'm working towards is the ability to leave this job. But just leaving the job isn't going to be enough to fulfill you or give you the enjoyment of life. It's really the purpose, right? And Adam and Eve, that was the punishment. You will toil all the days of your life, not until you're 65, not until retirement, but all the days of your life, right? So we are called to bring about God's divine providence. We are co-creators with God. That's how we are created in His image and likeness. Is that we actually get to change things. We get to create things through our work. And our work is also where we engage with our fellow man, which is where we can be Christ to one another. And so the idea of my job doesn't fulfill me, and so I will be happy when I can no longer do this job and just and go on vacation. That's not the formula. And so maybe you do have to stick this job out, right? Because you have bills to pay, you have tuition, you have kids, you have a mortgage. it's not like you can just, oh, this job is really awful, I'm just going to quit. You maybe can't do that. But to start thinking not about just leaving that job, but what do I actually want to spend my time doing? What can I create? How can I manipulate reality to bring community together and bring my experience together and serve my fellow man through my labors, which is really where we end up feeling fulfilled in our day and can go to bed excited for the next day.
Yeah, yeah. So let's continue down that. Let's look at, we've seen what the world offers for retirement. Meh. Doesn't sound so appealing after all. Let's look, what is a more thoroughly Catholic understanding of these later years, these golden years or whatever of life?
It's a lot to unpack, to be honest. One thing that I will say, so the compendium of the social doctrine of the church is one of my favorite resources. And just really quickly before we got on here, I did just a control F find, right?
Yeah.
And I found 534 times that work or worker were referenced in the compendium of social teaching of the church. Retire and retirement, 0. No, it was never mentioned. And so, in our faith, like that is, and I've kind of already touched on that, is Adam and Eve, it was, you will toil all the days of your life. Also, the parable of the talents. A lot of people will look at that, and I don't need to go into the whole thing. I think everybody's probably heard it a million times. But at the end, it was the servant that buried it in the ground. It wasn't, you stupid servant, you ignorant, not knowing how to manage money, servant. It was like, you could have at least, he even said, you could have at least put it in the bank where it would have gotten interest, right? It was, you wicked and lazy servant. So here's this servant that like could have taken the money and probably gone and at least put it in the bank, if not worked it, invested it, grew it, and was a trustworthy servant. But he was a lazy servant. He just buried it and left it. And so that's somebody who was shirking his duty to work. It wasn't just not taking good refund. Like his job was to take care of this, and he didn't. So he was a lazy servant. And so it's the folks that understand that they are called to be co-creators all the days of their life and to bring about God's kingdom here on earth through their interactions with their fellow man. And then what are your special gifts? What is your experience? That's the other thing I think that maybe in this civilization or in our current culture, we I don't know that we look to the older generation enough. And the older generation, they've had experience, and maybe they didn't grow up with the internet, and so we're like, they're so out of touch, but like they've experienced a lot more. And the older,
You're busy doing all that stuff I don't know how to do.
yeah, doing all the stuff I gotta use YouTube to figure out how to do. Um, and so they have wisdom, they have knowledge, and they have time, quite frankly. At one point I looked into the third order Franciscans, and they kind of laughed me out of the building. They're like, you have kids, you're young, like this is not for you. This is for people down the road that are empty nesters. There's the same thing with the diaconate. I was kind of looking into the diaconate, and they're like, you don't have time for this. Come back when your kids are all in college, and maybe you have time for this. And so that's just kind of reinforcing that whole, there's different periods of life. What do you want to be when you grow up? For my son, it's a football player, but he's 14. So he wants to be a football player when he's 18 and when he's 22, or if he's really great, he could be a football player when he's 28, but that's not really when you grew up. So I keep telling him, like, that's great, but then what? And so then you have this like period of your career that you are doing what you want to do, or trying to at least build a life, support your family. But there's still another phase of life, and where you have less responsibilities, maybe more disposable income. Your kids are moved out, like you have time, you have experience, and so now there's this beautiful opportunity for you to take everything you've learned, take your time, take your treasure, and give that back to your community, and bring those social energies and communities together. And also, by the way, like rub elbows with people that are like-minded. I have one client, she's wonderful. She's in her 80s, and she's one of the happiest retirees I have. She started a podcast about permaculture, but she started a advisory board, an environmental advisory board that advises the mayor of their town on how to like facilitate green spaces and parks and biodiversity and things. And the folks that she's meeting that are like-minded, there are these like retired arborists and retired this and retired that, all these people with this vast knowledge, and she's meeting all of these new people. She's just fascinated with the conversation she's having and making an impact on the community and setting the example for her kids and her grandkids and everything, that she in her 80s, and she's, I mean, she's acted and she's happy and she's motivated and her brain is still on, she's not watching Judge Judy and playing games on her phone. She's still living life to the fullest and making an impact because she has time, she has the money, she has the resources, she doesn't have the responsibility she did, and she has all sorts of experience that she can share in a variety of ways. And so it's kind of like, what do I want to be when I grow up? That could mean so many. There's different stages, right? And none of them are, as Catholics, are we called to just check out and just not create. We are co-creators. So
That's fantastic. Yeah, I look around, if look around the parish, probably true almost everywhere, and you see the backbone of the parish, the volunteers that seem to do everything. Most of the time, they're older folks,
mhm.
and it's like, come on, like, why can't we get some young people? It's like, well, because I've got 4 kids. I'm working in the business. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. Like, there's all these other things I've got to do, and I'm sure when they were younger and they had kids in the house, they weren't doing everything at the parish. But how beautiful is it that now that they have the time, they have that flexibility, they have that freedom, that's how they're choosing to use it. They're the first people to sign up for adoration slots. They're the ushers, they're the greeters, they're the selling the tickets to the fish fry or whatever it is.
Mhm.
They are putting themselves into, and probably making a fair bit of it possible, the life of the parish, let alone anything else that you could be doing. It can be an incredibly fruitful time. And not to mention time that you'd have available, for prayer and all that. When you hear of, and I feel like this is like every innovation, every technical innovation, whether it was, moving from working all day to do the wash to put it in the washer and the dryer and it'll take care of it. Or, the promise of, a self-driving car or something, right? Like, think of all the time you'll have, it'll drive for you. Like, you could do something else. Or this supposed, life of with AI and all this other stuff, like we could work for 3 hours a week or whatever. So often, all these advancements, all this increase in efficiency just ends up in us just doing more, taking on more work. We're not going to lounge back probably in that car and read a novel or something, let alone write one. Instead, we'll probably be on our computer answering emails just half an hour earlier on our way to work. We have this tendency to cram in more and more work, more efficiency. And so I feel like the same could be, we could have a similar kind of, what am I trying to get at here? Retirement is one of those times where it's not maybe through technological innovation, but like time can get freed up. And it's a question of how we want to use it, right? Maybe when we're younger, we're trying to earn more, like that tendency is going to go towards in these efficiencies, like to work more to try to provide more. But if that's all taken care of, we're entering into retirement. Now we've got all this free time, right? Maybe it's the weekend for us before those ages. It's all right, I've got a couple hours here. What do I want to do? Like, I could, read some great literature. I could go pray. I could, do some hobby. I could build something. But a fair amount of the time, it just ends up, I waste my life on my phone. I
Mm.
sit down and I watch a thing. I feel like it's easy looking into retirement or going into retirement. It feels like it could be easy to just let it turn into, without even consciously choosing it, the pleasure. Watching all these movies or going on these trips or going to the beach and I hope to do probably all those things when I am retired or when I do have some more time.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
I feel
there's
like even without buying into like worldly retirement, just fiddling away those years instead of allowing something great to be made with them.
yeah, I think that's where I mean, it's a little bit of a different perspective on it, but it's a sense of apostolate and vocation, right? Like my primary vocation is a husband and father. That's number one. And my work needs to come second, but my work supports my vocation as a husband and father. And I view it that way. This is not, you know, it's not for any other purpose, right? I'm trying to support my vocation, and I'm also trying to do what God is calling me to do, and be an unprofitable servant. I've done what I have been obliged to do, which is like working and bringing about the kingdom of God. If you are just looking to exit that, then you're going to be looking at, well, I can finally do this hobby or that hobby. But as you said, it takes intentionality and purpose. Otherwise, if you want to pick up the hobby of playing piano and you're going to pick that up in retirement, but why? Not to say that you shouldn't, but if you don't have a reason why that you're doing it, it is going to be a lot easier to just sit on your phone or get distracted by Netflix than actually go and practice the piano. So if you're practicing piano because you want to accompany a small group at your church worship session, you're going to put that time in. You're going to have schedules, you're going to make your deadlines, and you're going to do it. And you will feel fulfilled by your work to learn this new hobby, as opposed to just kind of a flippant. I think it'll bring me pleasure if I could play piano, but there's not enough there to make you do it. And so again, like, what are you called to? What is your vocation now? And what might your vocation be in the future? What are you called to? Another example I think is really great is a gentleman had a very long career, did a great job, 9 kids, and then started planning for his retirement. And he never liked his job, right? He never liked his job. Ended up eventually getting a job that he didn't hate, that he didn't have to like throw up on the way to work every day. So he enjoyed that enough, but it wasn't his purpose to really sanctifying himself through the obedience of going to work and through the sacrifice of I'm doing this for my family. And that's how he went through his actual professional career. But then a few years, we did a financial plan for him, and he was like, okay, I got kids in school, XYZ. And we made space for tuition for him. And he went back to school during his last couple of years of working and became a marriage therapist for Catholics from a Catholic perspective. And he was just like, this was going to be his mission and his purpose was to, because there's a lot of therapy out there that's just, quite honestly, but very anti-Catholic. And so after having a successful marriage and a successful family and going back to school, now in his retirement, he's back working full time. And it's not to say that everybody needs to work full time. That might not be your calling, but the purpose and the meaning that he gets from this and the way that he's serving Catholics in the church, like he's happier than he's ever been in his entire life. He's retired, working full time, and how do you put it? He's joyfully miserable. He's like, I didn't want to go back to work full time. I didn't want to commute. I didn't want to be at the office 40 hours a day. But gosh darn it, like I'm doing good work. And this is and there's other benefits. You know, there's more income in retirement and he's got health insurance. And so there's like a lot of things that helps with. But he's experiencing it because it was, where are my time and talents? Where am I being drawn? I can't do this right now because I have 9 kids in Catholic school and I have a family and whatever else. I can't. I feel like I'm called to help struggling Catholic couples, but I can't do it now. And so planning ahead for it to get the degrees and then to volunteer with Catholic charities and just again, and it was how he started volunteering with Catholic charities. And then that led to an introduction. And he's pretty well known now and rubbing elbows with some very high people. It is all just from, I think I'm called to help people. And it's a whole world, a whole retirement that he didn't exactly see coming because you never know how God is going to lead you. But it's about keeping that ear open to what are you calling me to and what does that look like and how do I prepare for it? Because again, he couldn't have done this as a 35-year-old with 9 kids. But now, and also like it goes back to I think I'd rather have a marriage therapist that's 65 years old and has been married for 30 years than somebody who's not even been alive for 30 years. So not to keep derogatory and any younger therapists out there. Like I love the people and the young seminarians coming out, man, that are on fire. Like age is not everything, but it certainly is something. It is an ingredient that's very important.
Absolutely. There could be many opportunities for an invitation to continue working and doing great work. We are made to work. We find value in work. Work is not a bad thing, right? Even before the fall and the toiling, Adam and Eve had work to do. It's part of us, like you're talking about, helps us bring out more of the resemblance between us and our Heavenly Father in creating or in tending, in nurturing, etc. So here's these two questions. Among Catholics, what do you think is the biggest misunderstanding about retirement?
I think I see it on two different sides. And probably the one is just that concept of like, I provide for the sparrows. I can count every hair on your head. How much more will I prepare for you and take care of you? You should have no anxiety at all. And so I run into a subset of Catholics that are like, I'm not planning for the future because I'm not supposed to. I'm supposed to rely entirely on God's providence and have no anxiety at all. And I think that's a little bit of a misunderstanding because again, we are called to be co-creators. We're called to be prudent stewards of the gifts that God gives us, and you can't do that without some forethought and planning for tomorrow. And but I think that so there's a little bit of a leaning on a theological concept to excuse you from the prudence in the planning because it makes you uncomfortable. Um, and then I that's probably the number one from like like a really devout Catholic. I would say that it's because the other side of it is going to be like the more like I just want to go and spend my time on the beach or like play more golf, and then the other side of it is the I just trust everything's going to work out. I'm not even going to think about it. And so those would be the two misconceptions I'd say. That's not that I wouldn't split people into those two groups. I'd say most people kind of have a sense of like I have a purpose driven life, but I'd say those are kind of the two misconceptions on either side.
And then whether you're pulling this, maybe whether you have like direct, I guess secondary experience, seeing it with some of the folks you work with or not, hopefully maybe not, then just draw on like your broader knowledge and perspective. What is the biggest mistake people are making in regards to retirement?
Not well, not planning for it because you can the earlier you get started planning, the more it can be in place, the more prepared you can be, the more opportunities you have to massage and make nuances to your plan as you go. If you get to the point that you're like, okay, today's the day, you're very, very limited on what you can do at that point. It's basically you're going to get what you get. So the sooner you start, the better the outcome. And then the other side of it is the folks who feel like every day is going to be Saturday. Because if you think about it, Saturday is the day that you spend the most money. And that's why it's your favorite day, right? But I do have some direct experience with a gentleman who retired. He loved golf. He played golf every single Saturday and just could not wait to retire. He's going to play golf every day. And he did. He played golf every day for a year and then came back to work broke with an alcohol problem, with a drinking problem.
Oh.
Because it costs a lot of money to play golf. You might have had enough, you had enough money to play golf on Saturdays, but when you start playing golf 5-6 days a week, you go through the money a lot faster than you think. And you see that actually a lot. The folks who are like, I'm going to spend my time on the beach, I'm going to spend my time kicking back and relaxing, or I'm going to be on the golf course every day drinking beer all day long. Like there is a epidemic of addiction among retirees who follow the worldly path of this is just an extended vacation. Because yes, if you take a cruise, you might be drinking Mai Tais at 11 o'clock in the morning. In a week, not a big deal. You do it once, for your vacation, I'm all for it. When that becomes your life, though, that's a dependency, and there's a problem there. And so that's the other side is the every day is going to be Saturday. Every day can't be Saturday. You probably can't afford it, and even if you could, not good for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it should be. Well, it's funny what you said every day Saturday because sometimes because we work at home, we homeschool, so we do have a fair bit of flexibility in our lives, and when we aren't planning, we're not planning the week and meal planning and figuring out what's going to happen when. Like when we kind of float a little bit, that's what we say. We go, man, it felt like every day was Saturday last week, and it's not a good thing. It can, if you have too many Saturdays, it's not a good thing.
Mhm.
Uh, uh, Maybe one a week would be good.
To hear that when they're working Monday through Friday, hate their job, can't wait to retire. They're like, "What do you mean too many Saturdays? I want all my like." It just doesn't compute, and you've actually had the experience and realize how incredibly hollow and unfulfilling.
Yes, it's like when I was in college, it was similar, right, to this golf guy. I thought, man, I love pizza. What's stopping me from eating pizza every day? Nothing
Mhm.
was, because there was like some form of pizza available in the dining hall or here or there. So it's like, I'm just gonna eat pizza, see what happens. I ate pizza for a week. It took a week, and I was like, I gotta eat something else. It wasn't only pizza that I ate, but I had it like every dinner or at lunch or whatever. And it was just like, all right, I think I've hit the max. When maybe before I would have thought, is there a max? Yes, yes, I reached peak pizza. And we can do that with so many other things in this world, especially if it's consuming, if it's focused on us instead of giving and dying to ourselves and giving of ourselves for others, right? We find ourselves when we make a gift of ourselves, right? That 80-year-old lady you're talking about, she's having a great time because she's taking all the things she knows and loves and experiences and is now channeling that outwards into the community and these relationships with all these other people. Of course, that's going to be very satisfying, much more satisfying than pizza every day or golf every day, but giving every day. There was, and then this one other thought, and this just popped in. So I guess I'll blame it on the Holy Spirit if it doesn't go well. But really, it's his idea. I was reading, this is years ago, St. Francis de Sales letters to people. There's a couple collections of his letters to different, people in religious life or people in the world. And I forget who he was even writing to, but he used this image of, he was writing to someone who was probably getting older, if not soon to be dying. And he used this image of transplanting a tree, and that you're not just going to rip it out all of a sudden and put it somewhere else, but you're going to take your time and you're going to loosen the soil from the roots, and then it's going to survive. And that we need to like loosen our roots, our grip on the world, and be ready to enter into the next. And retirement, I think it could be this opportunity to, yeah, right. A second adolescence when I made all my bad decisions. I could just start that all over again. Or it could be a time of focused prayer and devotion to family and to community and to the church and just to really opening up and giving of myself. I feel like that one's going to be a better preparation. That one's going to loosen my roots to get me ready, for the big dance, for the whole reason we're all
So
here.
I can piggyback on that a little bit too, of like even the transition earlier. Transitions are really difficult, really, really difficult. Just anytime you go through a transition, there's a period of a dark place where you're like, I don't know if this is my job, your job. Do I do this? Do you do that? How does this work out? How's it going to go? Any transition has some anxiety and has some unknowns to it. In retirement, the transition into retirement is similar. And we've been talking a lot about people who are like anxiously awaiting to leave their job. The other side of it is the folks that find all of their purpose and all of their meaning in the job and the future. And so that's kind of how I was thinking about it is those roots clinging to the job that maybe you don't get to have anymore. Is another example. I had a neurosurgeon who both of his parents lived well past 100. He was planning to live until he was 110, and he was only 60, 62, something like that. And he's like, I'm going to work probably until I'm 95 years old, truly, and probably live till I'm 110. And then a year later, he contracted a bacteria in his eye from exposure to chicken poop that was going to take his vision from him. And so now he was planning to be a neurosurgeon for the next 30 years, even as a 60-year-old. And he's like, I'm retiring in 6 months because I can't see anymore. And that could be a difficult transition. And that one was like, swept upon him quickly. But I think there are a lot of folks out there who do draw a lot of meaning and purpose from their work and do get that aspect of it. And you may be called to retire even if it's not in your plans. It might not be your decision. Your body might tell you you have to stop working. And so it's important to prepare for that as well. But then also those folks who, like, what does that transition look like? How do I loosen my roots of this sense of purpose for the job that I have so that I can be transplanted to do something that's more maybe community based or more family oriented and get my purpose there? You raise your family, you find a lot of purpose from your job, but maybe you don't have a whole lot of time for your kids. Hopefully you do, and you balance your priorities well. But that can be another aspect of it. It's not even maybe work. Maybe it's just throwing yourself into your own family. Is another example. I have a retired couple. They're in their 70s, doing very well. They planned ahead. They are well beyond their means, but their kids are struggling because their kids are all have large families with lots of kids, and it's expensive to live today. So if you're 22 years old and you start having kids and you've had 10 kids by the time you're 35, how in the world are you supposed to afford that on the way that things with what it costs today, and everybody's a two income family? Like, it's basically impossible. So what they're throwing themselves into, hey, thank you for having big families. We love our dozens of grandkids, and we want to make sure that they have safe cars to drive in, or like new car seats that they're protected. It's important to us that they go to Catholic school, so we will help you with the tuition for Catholic school or for the car payments and your car is breaking down, because we realize that you have made a sacrifice of yourself to your kids, and we appreciate that sacrifice, and that you're building souls for heaven, and that it's almost impossible for a young couple to raise these kids on their own these days. And to thank you for what you're putting into your kids, we're going to help you and make sure that you're not like ending up dead. And then they spend all of their time going to the kids' sporting events and going to their like, and everything, and they just like they're such a central part of their grandkids' lives. That those are experiences those kids will have forever, and they give opportunities that they would never have to go on vacation as cousins. And there's 20 cousins going on vacation together because grandma and grandpa paid for it. Because mom and dad would never be able to take their 7 kids on a vacation, and so let's pay so that all of these cousins now are going to forever have this memory of, remember when all 20 of us went and we were on vacation together, and that was grandma and grandpa did that, and how awesome. And so that's another way that you can like use your treasure to see it help your children, help your grandchildren, help them thrive, and just like make the impact in your very like own family group. And that's, you don't necessarily need a job. Maybe you just throw yourself into your family with all the time you have, and you help your kids that are drowning, because it's hard these days.
Absolutely. That's awesome. That's beautiful. It's, and of course it takes a little bit, maybe probably some more planning and having a handle on everything that's going on, financially, especially with this. But like, by doing that, you are now getting the resources. You're giving the gift when your kids are going to need it the most, not the inheritance that they're going to get when they're 60.
Yeah,
And they're like, well, all right, well, the kids already went through college. It's like,
exactly.
if we can move that, I'm sure so many people would be so thankful to have that help and to have those relationships and have that huge buy-in from their parents, and certainly financial help, versus their folks kind of disappearing onto the beach, or just kind of being around but holding back, and then getting, maybe an inheritance or something later. Like, yeah, I just like the way you framed of like, hey, we see you're having a big family, you're being faithful. We just are so happy to see that. We want to encourage it. All like, I'm like, yeah, that's it. There we go.
Yeah.
That sounds like a heck of a retirement. Our plan, we like RVs and all that. So like our plan is like, we're just hopefully, I mean, I guess ideally it would be great if all the kids stay close to one another and we can just live there. But if not, it's like, great, we're just gonna be in the RV and we'll kind of bounce around from driveway to driveway a month at a time, and like it'll be great. I'm looking forward to a Catholic retirement, whatever that might look like, whether it's I'm still working a lot, or maybe not at all, but I'm putting my time. Hopefully this is what I'm doing already, but a greater freedom and flexibility to put my time and my effort, my energy, my finances certainly into whatever God is asking me to, and to live that out and to be of service. And that's the picture I think we've painted here on this episode. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to it certainly for myself, but golly, just think of everybody else, all the people listening to this or watching this who could do that too. How incredible would that be to have, all these people as they have more flexibility to just give it away.
You're making, whether it's
Yeah.
with whether it's giving it to your grandkids or your kids for help, or even your charitable donations. Is as you kind of mentioned, some folks, they think like, I'm going to have my retirement and it's going to be my nest egg and I'm going to live off of this, and then someday I'm going to retire and I'll give it to charity, because it's like hoarding it a little bit. And again, it depends. If you planned really well and your nest egg is ample, then you have some flexibility. If you're struggling and eating hot dogs, then this isn't necessarily for you. And for those, you can hopefully plan ahead a little bit more, um, for the future, so that you have a different experience. But it's also those clients that say, we have more than we need. The Lord has blessed us. I want to see it used now. I know a couple that gave $3 million to build a new church, and they're building a beautiful cathedral. I went camping, actually. I went out for a camp in North Carolina, and just found a church, and it was basically in a strip mall. And that's what they were doing, though, is they were raising funds to build an actual beautiful, like, cathedral style church that was started with the $3 million from the couple after they sold their business. They have another couple that just upped there. They used to give a little bit. Now they're giving a ton every year, because they're like, I don't want to wait until I'm dead and gone and then the money goes out. I want to see it used. I want to direct it. I want to see the people I'm impacting. I want to see the kids happy. I want to see the church built. It's an opportunity to actually see your impact if you planned ahead and can do it now, rather than just knowing, okay, when I die, like Bill Gates is leaving a bunch of money, whatever, fine, whatever. See if you can
Yeah.
do it now.
Yeah.
Be a part of it. And
Yeah.
it's like, it put yourself into this difference that you're making, and be a part of that community and the impact, and get the joy from that. And then be excited to wake up tomorrow and still be retired and do your work, do your hobbies, and not just call your financial advisor and be like, hey, do you think you could give me more money? I don't know. I want to take another vacation. We're gonna do more travel. Like, I'm just so bored. Or I get those calls too. And so it's really important when you're talking about financial planning and planning for retirement, both financially, but also theologically. What is your job? Like, what is your mission? What is your purpose? What does retirement look like to you? And let's have a conversation about this with the wisdom of the church, not secular world, because it doesn't work. And plan ahead, and just, yeah. And that's the recipe. Have something meaningful, have something purposeful, give yourself to something. And don't start thinking about that 3 weeks after you retired, because you're in a dark space in a difficult transition. Start figuring out ahead of time, what am I doing? What is my retirement? And and plan for it, both financially as well as emotionally and mentally.
Absolutely. Well, you can't have a good, it's hard to plan for anything really, but especially retirement if you don't know what's going on with your finances. If you don't have a good handle on that, if you're not budgeting, all of that, that's of course where we can help you here at Wallet Win. Go on over to walletwin.com, check out what we have, and the Catholic Money Academy is a great place to start. CatholicMoneyAcademy.com. And then as you're getting there, if you're trying to plan out that retirement, or you're trying to figure out what's going on in investments and all of that, if you want some extra help, well, that is why financial planners exist. There's a whole network of them, the Financial Catholic Financial Planners Network at CatholicFinancialPlanners.com. And we've got one of them here today, KJ Smith. Again, thanks for joining us. You can, if you like him, you want to have a conversation with him, you can find him at elinvestments.net. That's his work as Ethos Logos Investments. So that's EL. So you don't have to spell the Greek. elinvestments.net. KJ, thank you so much for joining us today on the Catholic Money Show. It's been a blast.
Likewise, it was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for having me.
Sure thing.